Welcome to another episode of Shadows of the Tarot. Gerald had only just moved from interstate to this quaint, peaceful town. He was 21 now and had finally decided it was time to leave his past behind. He was sick of trying to repress his memories of his past, sick of having to drive past the church that had disrupted his whole childhood and haunted him his whole life. So now was the time to move on, leave the past behind, and start a new life. Although this was a very quiet town, they did have an annual fair, so Gerald decided to attend. He looked at many stalls and bought some vegetables and some sauces for his pantry. Then he came across a tarot reader, so he thought he'd have a reading to find out what his new life was going to be like here. He had his past, present, and future read, and she was quite spot on. His future seemed to say that he was going to release a lot of anguish and feel calm within himself. Then Elise took the antique card from the tin for further clarity, as was her usual practice now. She fanned them out for Gerald to choose a card. He hovered his hand over the deck. One particular card felt extremely hot, so he chose that card, which was the Hierophant. Elise clarified what it meant: the connection between personality and spirit, a route to greatness and pleasure, a spiritual bond. You will be released from oppression if you can learn to follow your own rules while paying attention to your conscience. It may also indicate disagreement with someone in a position of power. He thanked Elise and said that the reading had helped a lot because he felt he could live by his own rules now. He walked around the fair for quite a while, and then he spotted someone from his past. At first, he only saw the back of a man, but he was certain by his robes and his shape that it had to be the same man. He quickened his pace, past the man, and then pretended to be interested in a stall. Then he turned around to look upon the man's face. Feelings of nausea entered his stomach. He hadn't looked upon this face for many years. It was him, the beast from his past, the beast that had haunted him for all these years. The beast of a man was handing out flyers for a youth group at the church. Gerald walked up with his head slightly down to grab one of the flyers. At home, Gerald sat down, had a drink, and read the flyer. How could it be that of all the places he could have moved to, he had landed right on the beast's doorstep? It had to be fate. He had always wondered what had happened to the beast, otherwise known as Father Patterson. The name had always been engraved on his brain. You see, Gerald's parents thought he was a troubled child. When he was growing up, Gerald was always a bit different. He didn't like all the mainstream things that his parents had hoped he would. Gerald had opened up to his parents at the age of 12 that he thought he might be gay. His parents were old school. At first, they didn't accept what Gerald was trying to tell them. They told him he was too young to be thinking such thoughts and that social media and his friends must be influencing him. Father Patterson had offered a service to retrain such boys, basically to beat it out of them, toughen them up and make them men. So, Gerald's parents had taken him to see Father Patterson. On the first few visits, Father Patterson would just read excerpts from the Bible to Gerald. He would repeat over and over that it was not the right thing to have the feelings Gerald had, but Gerald was defiant, and after the fourth visit, he told Father Patterson that he was full of shit and that Gerald knew his feelings to be true. He had known for a long time. Father Patterson decided that the old-fashioned cane was indeed needed for this boy. He told Gerald to lean over his desk, and he started to strike at his bottom with the cane, but Gerald laughed. He laughed and shouted out that it didn't hurt and it wouldn't make any difference. Father Patterson made him pull his trousers and underwear down. He threatened that if he didn't, he would hit him across the head with the cane instead. He struck Gerald's bottom twice more. Then a strange feeling came across. Father Patterson looked at the boy's buttocks. He had never made a boy pull his trousers and pants down before. He had never seen the boy's small buttocks with his red strikes across their cheeks. A sudden urge came over Father Patterson. It was like a wave. He had never felt such strong sexual feelings or such desires in his loins before. He pulled up his robe and took the boy. Father Patterson hadn't had sex for many years. He released all of his pent-up frustrations into poor Gerald. Gerald was now screaming, but Father Patterson kept repeating repent, repent, repent with every thrust. Gerald had tried to put a cap on all these memories, and now they had come flooding back. He wondered if Father Patterson would even remember his face after all these years. Gerald decided that from that day on he would attend the local church. He would sit in Sunday services and just watch and listen to Father Patterson. Every word felt bitter in his mind. It appeared that Father Patterson didn't recognize him. After what had happened to Gerald, he never told his parents. He never told anyone. He hid who he was. And Father Patterson had left that parish. Gerald had always wondered what had happened to the beast, hoping he was perhaps dead. But now he knew that Father Patterson had simply moved on to another parish. Gerald watched for a while and plotted in his mind what he would do to Father Patterson. Gerald decided he would go to confession, so in the confessional, he revealed to Father Patterson that he was gay. But Father Patterson said that the church's views on such matters had changed over the years in some parishes, that it wasn't seen as a sin in their parish, and that as long as Gerald was comfortable with who he was, it was okay in the eyes of the Lord. Gerald was fuming. How can the church be so dead set against something and then change its views? But Father Patterson explained that maybe Gerald had belonged to a different denomination before, that this was a progressive church and that such things were not frowned upon. Gerald went away just feeling defeated. How could this man who had taken the cane to so many boys now feel cleared of his actions? Did this man have no conscience? Gerald would have to make him pay, for as long as this man's feet graced this earth, Gerald's soul would feel restless. The next time he went to service, he waited for the church to be empty. Then he went to Father Patterson and asked him to take his confession. He was going to confront Father Patterson. Father Patterson explained to Gerald that it would have to wait until next week, as he already had a prior engagement. Gerald was left feeling desperate for the whole week, but it was okay, for now he was certain of what he must do. He began to make preparations. He stockpiled about 10 jerry cans of fuel. He had been looking on his mobile phone at the picture of the tarot card. He had gone to sleep with the image of it in his mind. In his dreams, he could see the flames. He could see the gypsy woman, and she was telling him what he must do. He knew what he must do anyway, but she had shown him an image of a beast with Father Patterson's face, and it was burning. The week felt like it was dragging on. He wanted it to go faster. He wanted it to be all over with. He wanted his soul to finally be able to rest. Finally, the day had come. He put his plan into motion. The night before, he had broken into the church and placed his jerry cans of fuel into one of the cupboards in the side office of the church. He knew by watching Father Patterson that he never left the church straight away after service. He would always go along and check the pews for anything anyone might have left behind. He had seen him do this many times. Even before the last parishioners had left, he had gone and locked the back doors. He had snuck around the back and placed a padlock on the outside of the door. He asked Father Patterson if he could hear his confession. He sat in the confessional for a moment, then asked Father Patterson if he would like to confess. Father Patterson was confused. What did Gerald mean? Then Gerald asked Father Patterson if he could recall his times at his last parish. If he could remember the program for the wayward boys. Father Patterson became flustered. A realization came into his voice. He tried to apologize to Gerald, telling Gerald that he didn't know what had happened to himself on that day, that he had never meant to harm him, and that he had never hurt anyone since. That he had tried to change his ways, and that is why he left that parish and tried to move on to a parish that didn't have those views. Gerald said that he could not accept Father Patterson's confession. He quickly exited the confessional, picked up the crowbar that he had already left outside, entered where Father Patterson sat, and whacked him across the head with the crowbar with such force that it knocked him unconscious. Gerald felt a calmness all the while he did it. It was methodical. He had dreamt this plan for the last week. He went to the cupboard, got the fuel, tipped it over Father Patterson, and trailed some of the petrol over every pew down to the back door and out to the front door. He picked up the crowbar. When he got to the front door, he stood there for a moment, lit a cigarette, looked out at how beautiful the day was, and lit the fuel. He calmly walked to his car and went home. He had such a feeling of satisfaction, knowing that he wouldn't be haunted by the beast anymore. Remember to like, subscribe, and share to others, so you don't miss an episode.